back. Hello, friends. Welcome to the In-Between-Man podcast, where men can be men. And that's true. Today, we are diving into the State of American Men 2025 research study, headline number 2, which states the following. Men's views about masculinity are becoming more restrictive. Okay, and there's a term that you're going to hear in this study going forward that's a term that you need to get familiar with. And it's called the man box. The man box. What is the man box, you say? The man box is used to refer to a restrictive set of masculine norms that demand emotional stoicism, dominance, and self-reliance. Okay? That's what the man box is. So, if you're emotionally stoic, you like to dominate shit, and you believe that you're the one who's always right, you might fit into that box. Okay? They're going to use this term and this definition throughout the course of this actual heading. So let's get into more nuance associated with the man box. Men who are caught within this framework face a double bind. They must succeed as providers to validate their masculinity. Yet the man box emphasizes on independence, prevents them from seeking help where they struggle, right? You see the difference? I have to provide in order to feel like a man. And because I'm emotionally stoic, I'm not going to talk about any of my emotional feelings, and I'm stuck. What do? I'm stuck. I'm too good to ask for help. The provider role remains a cornerstone of masculine identity, even as economic realities in 2025 make this traditional expectation increasingly unattainable for many men. So we aren't evolving out of that, okay? The picture becomes more complex when we consider different groups of men. So-and-so demonstrates how minority men's relationships to manhood intersect with health equity, noting that assertions of masculinity can become survival mechanisms against racism while simultaneously creating barriers to healthcare access and emotional expression. This was a study done by Griffith. And I can put some detailed information in the description if necessary. Now this overview, in my opinion, is absolutely epic. Okay? So the confluence of these factors, confluence means coming together, two streams coming together. Economic precarity, which is what we talked about in the previous episode, undermining traditional provider expectations, restrictive masculine norms preventing help-seeking behavior, and systemic inequalities compounding stress for marginalized men, creates what can only be described as a perfect storm of masculine mental health crisis. Without deliberate intervention to redefine masculine success beyond economic provisions and to challenge the man box's emotional restrictions, we risk losing an entire generation of men to depression, anxiety, and despair. This is the most profound statement, I believe, in the entire study. All right, so I am going to actually read this to you again because I not only need to hear it, I think you need to hear it again for everything that it's describing. So this last paragraph, I just want to spend a couple minutes on. I want to spend a couple minutes on because I do think it is absolutely vital that men understand this simple, not so simple component. And it's incredible how one paragraph can describe how I know I felt and how I believe a lot of other men are feeling in today's world. Okay? So I'm going to read it again very slowly so all of you can hear it. All right? The confluence of these factors, two rivers coming together, economic precarity, which is undermining traditional provider expectations. We talked about economic anxiety last week. That's what this is speaking to. Restrictive masculine norms preventing help-seeking behavior. Emotional stoicism. It's a trait in the traditional male value system that's been around for fucking decades. That is harmful for men. Why? Because they're not even considering looking at any trauma they have faced in the last year, 5 years, 10 years, or growing up. They believe that they shouldn't, and to stuff it that makes it go away. And it's not true. And also, systemic inequalities compounding stress for marginalized men creates what can only be described as a perfect storm for masculine mental health crisis. What we just described in that one sentence is masculine mental health crisis. Without deliberate intervention to redefine masculine success beyond economic provisions and to challenge the man box emotional restrictions, we risk losing an entire generation of men to depression, anxiety, and despair. Did you just hear what I said? This is what this study is helping us bring to light. The confluence of these factors, economic precarity, undermining traditional provider expectations, restrictive masculine norms, preventing help-seeking behavior, and systemic inequalities compounding stress for marginalized men creates what can only be described as a perfect storm for the masculine mental health crisis. We're in it. Whether you realize it or not, we're in it. Without deliberate intervention to redefine masculine success beyond economic provision and to challenge the man box emotional restrictions, we risk losing an entire generation of men to depression, anxiety, and despair. This is what I want to create. I want to create a male-only, private male-only Discord server of men like this, where we can engage and interact with other like-minded people and have constructive discussions about rewriting our narrative. because no one else is going to rewrite it. Only we can, right? Without deliberate intervention. That means that you have to agree that we're in a masculine mental health crisis for many reasons, not just these two or three. There's a whole host of other dynamics here too that also come into play that we're not even touching on yet. All right? We risk losing an entire generation of men to depression, anxiety, and despair because men can hold on to so much emotional pain that it's not until they reach a desperate moment that they're willing to make changes. And I'm simply saying to you that we don't have to get to that point anymore. We don't have to carry the load anymore, right? We can become willing to maybe address these issues sooner, okay? All right. I didn't want to get off on a tangent, but this resonates with me. It resonates with what I want to do. It resonates with the whole purpose of this research study. And, it's giving me more fuel to be the deliberate intervention. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'll ever be that. But someone's got to do it. And I'm not saying I'll be the only one. There's a lot of other people who are talking about this stuff now. But if it doesn't happen now, and we don't start talking about it now, it's probably not, I know it's not going to happen. So, deliberate intervention, all right? Now, what we're going to do for the rest of this video is we're going to talk about man box beliefs, okay? And we're going to go over some of the statements that people in the man box believe as a way to define restrictive masculinity, okay? So in this example, if a guy has a girlfriend or a wife, he deserves to know where she is all the time. In 2017, 46% of men agreed with that statement. In 2023, 51% agreed with that statement. And for 2025, 55% of men agreed with that statement. What does that tell you? A man should always have the final say about decisions in his relationship or marriage. In 2017, 34% of men agreed with this statement. In 2023, 41% of men agreed with this statement. And in 2025, 42% of men agree with this statement. Furthermore, a gay guy is not a real man. In 2017, 29% of men agreed with that statement. In 2023, 36% of men agreed with that statement. And in 2025, 38% of men agreed with that statement. So between 2017 and 2025, restrictive beliefs on manhood have increased. Okay. Here's some more data that will help you understand man box beliefs. Black and Hispanic men who faced acute economic exclusion are more likely to support man box ideas. So let's talk about some stats. Compared to white men, black men are 2.3 times as likely to be in the man box. Here's another set of example. Compared to white men, Hispanic men are 1.4 times as likely to be in the man box. So we're supporting this behavior, which we know is restrictive. Okay, so let's cut into this data. Men who are experiencing economic anxiety are twice as likely to say they wish that they were more masculine. And Gen Z, men between the ages of 18 and 24 years of age, are most likely to say they wish that they were more masculine. So our Gen Z era. Again, more data confirming man box beliefs. We don't want man box beliefs. We want to think outside the man box. All right, so let's check out some of this data because it's freaking compelling. Men in the man box are 6.3 times as likely to report having thoughts about suicide in the past 2 weeks. Men who have reported feeling economic anxiety are 1.8 times as likely to be in the man box. Huh. Oh my God. All right, let's keep going. More man box beliefs. But being in the man box also has some social value. All right, gang, let's get into the next man box belief. And this one makes me a little crazy because I think there's some dynamics to it that aren't being considered. And I'm going to spend some time on the reasons why I don't think they're being considered in just a second. So, man box beliefs. But being in the man box also has social value. Okay, so we've already said that we don't want to be in the man box. But now we're saying there's some social value being connected to it. The more men and women report endorsing man box ideals, the more likely they are to feel a sense of purpose in life. And this is where I want to just make a statement. This is where this type of research can be confusing, because we are talking about man box ideals and how we don't want to be in them. But we're also reporting on the fact that even though men are in them, there is some good that's going on that makes them feel like they have purpose. So is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? I would argue that that's a confusing thing. That's making men confused. And I'll share with you why here in just a second. Okay? So this is the last man box belief that we're going to go over. And I'm going to spend a couple minutes on it because I really want to drive home this point. Caregiving also gives men a sense of purpose. And there we see hope. Okay? That I'm okay with. Fathers are 1.3% times as likely to report feeling a sense of purpose compared to men who don't have children. I do agree with that statement. And here's the quote that comes with it. There is no adrenaline rush like seeing my kids succeed. If it's in sports, if it's in reading a poem, if my son was like, hey, Dad, I'm about to learn how to stand on my hands, and 3 days later, he's walking around in the house on his hands, I'm just making sure I pour into them. And when you see the results or see them say something you might have said or a habit you might have had that is beneficial, that is good. And that's from a Black man whose voting dynamics are unknown. Okay? So I'm not disagreeing with the fact that caregiving isn't a good thing. Okay? I know that when I was going to get married, that I wanted to play an active role in my children's upbringing for one primary reason. My stepfather who lived with me and my mother for my entire childhood, from 8 till when I left, played an active role in my upbringing. He was home every day. He would help me with my homework, right? Like, he was there doing the things that my father obviously couldn't do because my parents were divorced. But I saw how important that was. I felt how important that was. And I wanted to make sure that I had that same caregiving mentality for my kids. Okay. And I want to go back to the previous data point, which I believe is causing some confusion. All right. And the confusion is, but being in the man box also has social value. So now we're saying, don't be in the man box. But even though men are in the man box, they are getting some social value. So the men and women who are endorsing the ideals of the man box are more likely to feel a sense of purpose in life. Is that a good thing? I don't know. I don't want to be in the man box. I might even say that it's a false sense of purpose. And here's the only point that I want to bring up that's not related to this survey. This is my personal experience, okay? So you can identify with it or not, okay? So when I got married and decided to have children, I made a decision, because of the way that I grew up with my stepfather, that I wanted a job that would allow me to stay at home so I could be actively involved in the responsibilities of caregiving, right? I thought that would be a positive thing to do, okay? And where the lines of communication in this zone happened for me were, my wife at the time was a stay-at-home mom. And there were responsibilities that a stay-at-home mom would do. But she started communicating with me in a way that let me understand that she didn't want to take on all the responsibility of being a stay-at-home mom, which is okay. You know what I mean? I'm not knocking that she's not asking for help, because she is. But let's take a second and I'll help you outline the areas that she's asking for additional help. Some are minor, some are major, but they're areas nonetheless. Okay? So she asked me to take on some of the responsibility for washing the clothes. Okay? So that was part of what she asked me to help her with. Cleaning up the house and various different house chores, right? I was responsible and willingly volunteered to change shit-filled diapers. Like, I was okay with that. I was also okay with some nights coming in from work early and making dinners, where I think the traditional stay-at-home mom would be responsible for making all dinners, okay? Part of those responsibilities of cleaning up the house, including vacuuming every night after dinner, mopping the floor, not every night after dinner, dusting, and doing all the stuff that goes along with dusting, along with, giving baths to my kids late at night and even reading bedtime stories, which, again, I wanted to do that, okay? And I wanted to have that experience with my kids because I thought it was helpful. But my wife made sure that she understood that she did not want to take on all of the responsibilities associated with vacuuming, mopping, cleaning, and dusting, and the house chores, and along with washing the clothes, right? I was responsible for, picking up my kids during the work week if it fell upon within work hours. If she couldn't do it, I stepped in and helped out there, which is okay and what a partner would do. But just another thing that I didn't think I would have to do if the responsibilities were cut down the middle. Every now and then we had parent-teacher conferences, and my wife would expect me to go in and have an active part in the education of my child and what that all meant. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. She was a teacher, right? She did understand these dynamics more than most moms, which I was grateful for. But can't you take on that? Is that something that I need to take on? I don't feel like I added any value there. The only value that I felt I added was defending her in a situation where she had valid arguments on why the school was recommending something that she didn't agree with. And I felt compelled to be there to support her, because most of the time she would just get hoodwinked and told, we don't do that. Okay. Obviously changing the sheets every week, cleaning those. There was the responsibilities for cleaning up the bathroom, our master bathroom, the kids' bathroom, the toilets, the sinks, right? All those things were a part of my responsibility now. Cleaning the showers. I partook in even oven cleaning and things like that. I was asked if I would help with making school lunches for the kids. Sometimes get up early and make breakfast for the kids if my wife was having a long day and she didn't want to get up to do that. Again, these are things that I could do and wanted to do as a supportive husband, but let me keep going. Taking my kids to doctor's appointments or picking them up from friends' houses. Another good example is I would get up in the middle of the night and bottle feed my son while my wife would sleep. Those are kinds of things that I felt like I should do in order to honor my wife. The other thing too is my kids got into sports, football practice, baseball practice. Sometimes I ended up coaching because there was no coach and nobody knew what they were doing. And even going to midday school events. If I was home, I was expected to go to those things, no questions asked, right? And so that was some of the stress that I felt I was hearing from my wife, okay? That these were the things that she needed help with, and I heard them and volunteered to be of help, okay? But as a man, I also have jobs at the house. So not only as a financial provider, I have additional responsibilities as a man that I haven't asked for help with. Okay? All right? And let me just point out some of those to you so that you can see my point. This is an absolute man job, taking out the trash. I took out the trash. Sometimes if my wife wanted the room repainted, I would repaint a room. I wouldn't spend $600 on somebody coming in and painting the room. I used to do it in college. And so that's what I did. So if there were any upgrades that needed to done to the house, or any maintenance related things like cleaning out the gutters, power washing the driveway, those are kinds of things that I was compelled to do because I like doing them, but those are some of my responsibilities as well. My wife had a brilliant idea of staining the deck that we had outside to protect it from sun. So we did that together. We both did that together. I got to give her credit for that. So she helped with that process. I did install a brand new electric stove into our granite countertop piece. I had to measure out those areas. That was another thing. How about mowing the lawn? Buying the lawnmower, snow shoveling, weed whacking. What do we do when fall comes? We got to bag all those leaves. That's not typically a female responsibility, although she did help with bagging the leaves outside, but she didn't help with mowing the lawn or anything like that. The other thing that I was, kind of responsible for was, fixing clogged toilets or bathtubs that got filled with hair. If there was a crisis there, I would fix it, right? That's a man job. Sometimes I would install, or I did when my kids were younger, I would install a smaller toilet so that the younger kids would be easier for them to take a shit and take a whiz. There's sometimes when we went up the steps that had carpet on them, I removed the carpet and I put in wooden hardwood floors and sawed them and cut them and put them into place there. We had a kitchen table that had some stain on it, and I resurfaced the whole thing. I took the stain off, I sanded it, I resurfaced the entire table, and I did the same thing with all the chairs, and the chairs had spindles in them, right? These were things that my wife wanted to have happen, and I luckily had the ability to do it. I did retile a bathroom. I did, because I had some experience in the air conditioning space, I did install an instant hot water heater I found on Facebook for like $100 that worked. That gave us instant hot water. I was able to braise copper pipes and put that together. I mean, that was fun. I rebuilt our entire porch. I also we had a garage that had concrete slab on it, and I rented a machine from Sunbelt Rentals that grinded the whole thing down, and I put a silicone sealant over the top of it and upgraded our garage floor to something that was a little bit more stain proof, right? I would spread mulch. I would put new pavers around trees so that we had a place to put flowers, right? I do oil changes, I change air filters, right? If there was an ant problem or termites outside, I would fix that. If the AC wasn't blowing cold, I was, compelled to troubleshoot that. Usually it was a bad filter. I would hang new curtains and ceiling fans if that needed to happen. Troubleshooting any tripped breakers that might have tripped, because we had too many hair dryers going on at the same time. And obviously, anytime we got anything from IKEA, I was responsible for putting all that stuff together. Now, at the time, right, I just accepted that I was going to be doing all these things that I just rattled off, okay? What I didn't expect was that my wife's responsibilities were going to be now a part of my responsibilities, right? Because she can't take on the same amount of responsibilities that I have as a man, because, unless she wants to do it, but she did want to do it. She doesn't want to tear off a toilet, okay? But I never considered in any of my dialogue with my ex-wife how I would negotiate the simple facts that she's asking me to assist her in her job responsibilities. That was never a conversation that I had. I just sucked it up and I said, of course, okay? And in the process of breaking down what we're talking about in this second headline, can you see how that dynamic, even though it may be a man box kind of thing, is not helpful? I need to be able to say to my wife, who I'm a partner in, whoa, I'm not taking on clothes washing and responsibility. Are you going to mow the lawn every week? Right? I'm not going to mop or clean the floors. So are you gonna fix the toilet when it blows up? Right? It never occurred to me that I could, in a healthy, positive manner, negotiate what I am willing to take responsibility for and what I'm not. Because the narrative today is women are pointing a finger at you because you're not helping. Okay? They aren't considering any of the responsibilities that I just mentioned. I never considered them. So I never considered that it would be something I would need to negotiate about. I just accepted that I needed to do it. Okay? And this is where, if you can identify with what I'm talking about here within this topic, where narrative needs to be changed. I don't want to do the laundry. But if you're going to ask me to do the laundry, are you going to shovel the entire driveway when the snow comes? No. Well, let's come to a compromise. Well, you only have to do the snow once or twice a year. So what? It's a lot of work. Is it the same amount of work as washing the clothes? I don't know. But mowing the yard and shoveling the driveway, I mow the yard every week. Do you want to mow you want to take turns mowing the yard? Do you see where I'm going with this? It was like a wake-up call. Like, I don't need to do all of that. And I don't want to do all of that. And it puts the responsibility back on us and me and what I am okay with and not okay with. And this is the narrative that needs to be changed. Okay? We need to go into relationships where we're being told by our partner that they need help in all these different areas. And we should sit down and gladly listen to them. But we need to come to the table and say, hey, I'm the financial provider here. We've agreed, as you being the caregiver and not working and staying at home, that that's a benefit to you and us and our children. Okay? And on top of that, I'm also responsible for all these other chores that I have to do, whether it be paying someone to actually do it or to actually do it. I'm not going to spend the money. Maybe you have enough money to do that. Okay? Maybe that's the deal. You say the toilet gets clogged and you need to get fixed. Call Roto-Rooter, spend $500, take it out of petty cash, and now the problem's solved. Don't bring it to me. But you can have a conversation about it. And you can let people know what you are willing to do and what you're not willing to do. And no one, absolutely no wife, in my opinion, deserves any of this. You are a partner in a marriage together. And for so long, there has been an unequal balance because women are feeling the need to share what they can and can't do. I'm saying to you now, have the conversation. But here are some points that you can bring to the table that you can have a realistic conversation about and not just accept it as something that you need to do as a man. You may decide after having the conversation you're going to do them all anyway, but at least you have a say in it. I didn't, because I didn't know any better. All right, I went off on a tangent. You'll have to forgive me, but I hope that this makes sense, okay? That this example makes sense to you and that the man box example makes to you. Without deliberate intervention to redefine masculine success beyond economic provision and to challenge the man box emotional restrictives, we risk losing an entire generation of men to depression, anxiety, and despair. And I'm not going to sit on the sidelines and say that it's okay. This is it. This is it. We sell everything that we have to save ourselves. That's what happened in Margin Call. And they fucked everybody in the meantime. That's not what's happening here. I'm simply saying to you that we need to come to the table to understand where we're at so that we can make decisions that are in men's best interest. That's all I'm saying. Okay? If some of that goes against what's being shared about now in this woke world, so be it. But I'm adamant about this. I don't want an entire generation of men to be lost to depression, anxiety, and despair for any reason, especially if it's self-inflicted. Anyway, I appreciate all of you more than you know. So do me a favor, do yourself a favor. Just get out of here, and I'll see you on the next one.